All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Come on in. Welcome to this live Wife After Prison. This is our bi-weekly live, and I'm so excited to come to you with the guest, Mr. Percy Glover. And he is going to be sharing his roles from prison to success. So as you come in, I'm going to ask that you let us know where you're joining from. Also, share this live, share this information, this live out. Everybody knows someone who has been affected by the system, the prison system. And so just share this information. I'm sure Mr. Glover is going to be dropping some nuggets on us, as well as giving us some key things that we can do to support our loved ones. And if you are watching and you have been incarcerated, I try to bring guests to the platform that will encourage you, that will encourage those who have been in prison, to let them know that success after prison is definitely possible. And I've been following Mr. Glover for since 2022. We started the conversation in 2022, and 2 years later, here we are. We're having this conversation. So again, come on in, let us know what you're coming from. And as always, we're saying something that you have a question. Don't hesitate to put your question in the chat, and then I'll show the question on the screen, and we'll give Mr. Glover an opportunity to answer the question. For those of you who are new here, my name is Sheila Bruno. I'm the founder of Wife After Prison. Wife After Prison was established in 2018 to raise awareness what is known as post-incarceration syndrome, which is a set of challenges and difficulties that those who have been incarcerated they undergo, and so causing them to struggle during the reintegration process. And not only them, their behaviors can attach themselves to the families, causing the families to struggle. When I needed this information, I could not find it, so I created what I needed. And so today we're going to be talking about PICS. We're going to be talking about some of the roadblocks and how Mr. Glover overcame. Again, I just want those who are listening to know that success after a prison sentence is possible. It is possible. To my sisters and brothers who may be looking and you have struggled, just get your pen and your paper and take some of these notes and apply some of the things that he's going to share. I remember getting a phone call, a text message from someone, and it said, "I want to go back." And it was late at night, so I didn't call. And of course, early the next morning, I couldn't wait to wake up. I woke up and I dialed the number, and I recognized his voice, and I said, "What do you mean you want to go back?" And he said, "Miss Bruno, I'm overwhelmed." He said, "I'm overwhelmed with the responsibilities of freedom." And he said, "I just want to go back to the simple things when I was in prison." And so I said, okay. I said, "Well, number one, do you trust me?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am." And I said, "Well, going back is not an option. We just take that totally off the table." Yeah. So I said, "We're going to start anew, as though you just came out of that gate. And we're going to take that crawl and we're going to turn it into a walk. And then we're going to take that walk and we're going to turn it to a run when it's time." Right. But again, my brothers and sisters who are returning, give yourself 999 chances. When you get to 999, just press reset and keep going. Just know that you can make it. So without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Glover. Just feel free to share what you want. You've been incarcerated, how long you've been incarcerated, how long you have been home, and some of the amazing things that you have done since you've been away.
Thank you for having me, Miss Sheila. And yes, it was 2 years in the making before we could finally connect and make this stream happen. So happy to be here. So happy to be connected with you. Applaud all of the wonderful work and initiatives you are sharing across the country with people who are returning back to the community, as well as those families who are or have experienced incarceration. I think a lot of times we forget about the impact when the loved ones is in jail and prison, that impact on the mom, the dad, the siblings, the
Right.
children, the grandchildren. I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we forget about that impact on what it has for the family structure, as well as the community. Again, my name is Percy Glover. I am president, founder of Fair Voting Alliance. FAIR is an acronym that stands for Free Access Inclusive Rights. Our mission, not our only mission, but our primary mission is to look at the economic ramifications when Black, Brown, and marginalized communities are not voting. So it's a two-headed monster. When Black, Brown, and marginalized communities don't vote, dollars, millages don't come into the community. However, with 60% of Black people being in poverty, we don't vote because of just that. We're poor. And because we're impoverished and we're struggling with poverty and we're lost in all of the emotional, physical, spiritual, obviously economic, mental, emotional struggles around everything fiscal, we are not interested in what's happening in the electoral process.
Mm-hmm.
So empowering people to understand that civic engagement also relates to voter economics and voter currency. And the more you engage in your civic responsibilities, the more voter currency and economics you have. And it brings people, and I'm not saying it's the end result or solution for poverty, but it's a piece to it, obviously. I'm also co-executive director of community engagement at the Genesee County Sheriff's Office. I say that I'm not a traditional law enforcement officer. I don't arrest. I don't do custody in a jail. My assignment and responsibility is to take lemons and make lemonade. That means being an ambassador for the community that is a cog in the machine that helps the sheriff in our county be better connected with our community so that he understand and can support the community in his best way in his leadership and with his resources while also addressing race relations, police relations, obviously Black and brown communities are policed in the healthiest way as some of our other ethnic communities. So just making sure that everything from an understanding perspective that we have the all understanding that we are all in this together. There are not races, but one race, the human race, and we
Mm-hmm.
should be looking at it from that perspective right there. And that's not to minimize the struggles Black, Brown, or marginalized people struggle with. That means that we understand collectively to better them. I also spent 11 years, 6 months, 4 days within the Department of Corrections. I've been blessed to be out going on my 21st year. Um, Very interesting. Back then, you didn't have all of the service and support that you have today. You know, it was a cycle, a very vicious one where people released to the community, they couldn't find jobs, they couldn't find economic support, so they returned to the poor behavior that most times led them to jail and prison. I also find myself in a similar situation where I couldn't find healthy employment, couldn't find resources, but I found my way by the grace of God. And I've been blessed to work in some pretty interesting places as a person with lived experience with incarceration. I worked at our local college. I worked at one of our local universities. I've even worked at Flint Probation Parole, where I was community coordinator for Region 6, which encompasses 7 counties. I had a desk a few cubicles away from my former parole officer. I currently work at the Genesee County Sheriff's Office, and I've been a contractor for the National Sheriff's Association. So I've been in some really interesting employment assignments, and I tell people all the time, my worst experiences are my best experiences to educate the people. You know, it
Wow.
took a lot for me to stop running from all of my mistakes and embrace them because my mistakes was the education for me, but also the education for other people. And once I understood that and stopped trying to find a traditional job assignment and not try to fit into a traditional job role, things got a lot better for me. Like most people back then, not being able to find employment, definitely not being able to find employment that paid well, it was a struggle.
Yeah, yeah.
But
So let
one
me.
thing, I'm sorry, go ahead, please. One
So
thing,
go ahead.
one thing about our past choices is that as we learn and grow from them, they are the tools and the right tools in our toolbox to be successful and create success for other people. Because a lot of people are struggling with the same things I struggled with 25, 30 years ago, and in my achievements, obviously I can, in a very modest way, support somebody else in their transition to success.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and so to the listeners, this is the type of energy that I want to bring to the platform, because I've had so many family members who have been just discouraged and say, "Are there any success stories?"
Mhm.
Right? And so we're definitely listening at a success story, someone who did 11 years, 6 months, and 4 years, and have been out just over 20 years. Now, take us back prior to going to prison. What was your pre incarceration days like?
Um, Typical young person, knucklehead stuff, hanging out too much, drinking too much, lack of focus, lack of ambition or goals, just all of the traditional boys in the hood behavior, the things we see on TV that we still see today with young men,
Yeah,
not just young black men, but young men as a whole.
right.
Um, so a lot of just that young and dumb stuff that I
Yeah.
did that's pretty common.
Okay, so going into prison, I always ask this question. Did you have to become anybody going in prison? Because several of them have said, I had to become someone that I was not in order to survive prison. So did you go in prison as Percy, or did you have to, put something on that so that you wouldn't be taken advantage of you while you were inside?
So that's an interesting question. So I was probably naive going into the penal system because I didn't have a lot of close friends that had any experience with prison. So I really didn't know what to expect. But one of the things that was key for me and my growth while there was, and I told myself if I picked up any new behavior or habits, it would be for the better. I'm not going to pick up any habits that I'm doing just because I'm here. If I
Yeah,
change, I'm going to change for the better. And that wasn't a push of the button process, but it was something that I was determined to keep at the forefront of my mind. So I didn't have to become anybody else. It was just really understanding and learning who I was. Some of, and probably a lot of the behavior and involvement pre prison was just kind of going with the flow of friends, going with the flow of because he's my friend, let me entertain it.
yeah,
Maybe not something I really enjoy, but out of loyalty for my friend, let me embrace it. So it
yeah,
was more so just understanding who I was and understanding, you know what, this is what I really enjoy in life. This is what I really don't enjoy in life. This is what I'm really good at. This is what I'm not so good at. This is what I can get better at. So it was really just fighting myself.
yeah. And what are some of the things that you did on the inside that helped you to better yourself, to find yourself?
So in prisons back then in Michigan, there wasn't a lot of educational opportunities. There were almost non-existent at that point. Much better job today from the MDOC with a lot of different programming and college courses that's offered in the Department of Corrections today. Then that wasn't the case, but I was super, super blessed to have some pretty cool mentors around me. I would have several business owners, a couple of attorneys, a senator, a doctor, men who had some unique professional experiences who have made some mistakes that landed them in prison. So
Wow.
that mentorship and their understanding of this is how you should conduct yourself professionally. This is how you communicate professionally. This is how you walk, talk. This is how you dress professionally. This is what it means to buy a suit, buy shoes, belt, tie for a professional situation. So having all that mentorship and being a real sponge is what really helped me.
Wow. So were you in federal? Did you do
Nope, I
federal?
was in Michigan prison. I was
Huh?
in I was in Michigan prisons.
Okay. Okay. And so these were professional people on the inside that mentor you?
Yep, yep. Which that's
Interesting.
obviously like what you're alluding to. Um, Federal incarceration is heightened by that. You know, there's a lot more diversity because they're federal crimes, and there's a lot more diversity across people, races, ethnicity, and experience. You know, you might see several doctors or pharmacists or politicians or former elected officials in a federal prison. You know, so I was really lucky to encounter gentlemen with these type of experience in multiple Michigan prisons.
Wow. Okay, you say multiple. So you were in not just one prison?
Nope. So how it works is the more time you have or the less time defines your custody level.
Right.
So entering, I had, a significant amount of time, I had more than a decade. So as my custody level dropped, I went to a less secure facility. And the more time that I came off the sentence, the more or less secure facility I went to.
Wow. So you had a mindset shift while you was locked down.
Of course, of
Yeah,
course, of
yeah,
course.
yeah. So to the listeners, again, I always want to bring someone to the table that can educate you as well as give you hope. You
Mhm,
know, uh, like the lady, she was just in tears when she asked the question, is there any success
mhm,
stories?
mhm,
So for 2024, I said, okay, I'm going to have to bring more success stories to the table to let you know and to give you hope, to that mom whose son is getting ready to get out of prison and she's concerned, or to that wife or whomever, your loved one is getting ready to get out of prison and so you are concerned. But as I was talking to Mr. Glover before we went live, we can hope all we want to, but
mhm.
it's up to that individual to do the work.
Of course,
If you
of
don't
course,
do the work, you will not get the results.
of course.
Yeah,
And
and
one of the
go ahead.
and one of the things I enjoy that you point out is PICS, post incarceration syndrome. That has to be a really intentional thing. It's well documented on a social work, on a psychology level textbook that prison does something to you mentally. It does something to you emotionally and behaviorally. Incarceration does something to you in those same ways. So you have to be really, really intentional and really, really positive and really caring for yourself and honest with yourself to look at, examine, and nurture yourself on an everyday basis while you're in prison. It has to be an internal desire to want to stay on stable and solid ground because you could easily slip and lose it in there. Prison is by far extremely mentally challenging. But
Yeah.
then also we have to hold our prison administrators accountable that they are having the right mental health services
Hmm.
provided to people in prison and in jails. We have to understand that there's a very small number of people that will die in prison. Most people across prisons in America is getting out at some point. So we want to make sure they are equipped emotionally, mentally, and confidently to return back to the community. While
Yeah.
that is 100% an internal thing and it should be an internal desire, but that should be also supported. And prison officials and administrators have to find ways to support that.
So let me ask you this, because each prison is different with their policies and their programs and lack thereof. What
Mhm.
is something that a family member can do, something practical that we may be able to do to help our loved ones while they are in prison, sending them material?
Mhm.
What type of material can we be sending? What type of conversation should we be having with them? And this is another question I want to ask too. So we talked about it. We know that prisons are powerful places, capable of transforming the behaviors. How do you have that conversation with your loved one? Because some people in prison get out like, prison ain't affecting me. I'm good. This and that and other. How do a family member have that conversation with their loved one?
So, just being very honest, so that it's not a burden or a cost to a family member in the best way practical for them, that doesn't become overly burdensome, you be positive first off. Maintain a positive, happy spirit about the situation. And I know that's difficult because of the level of sadness, the distance, but find a way to first find happiness and joy daily, and laughter is good medicine. Find a way to be able to effectively and sincerely laugh about not the moment of struggling with prison, but still having access and the ability to enjoy the family member. So when you look at those positive things drive those positive human actions and reactions. As it drives those positive actions and reactions for the family member, it drives those positive actions and reactions for the person that is way as well.
Okay.
So we first have to find positivity and maintain that very consistently. And then we must also find and consistently maintain a spirit of joy and laughter. Because we have to do everything in love. We have to do everything in light. So honest, genuine laughter, joy, happiness in the connectedness that doesn't burden the loved one in the community. Because obviously, and I say burden because prison comes with a cost. Phone calls are expensive, visits are expensive. Most people who are in prison are miles and hours away. If you're in a federal prison, you're probably on the other side of the country.
So
So
let me.
also, I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So also not taking a little moments for granted and enjoying them as well. Well, again, without things being coming so burdensome on the person who is in the community. And encouraging your loved one in very transparent communication that, hey, in the best way that's comfortable for everyone, let's maintain a joyful, happy, a confidently transparent, genuine confidence around happiness and joy and laughter. We can't
Okay.
make a impossible situation more impossible and more stressful because again, it breaks everyone down when we do that.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So you say we need to be happy,
Of course.
have uplifting and positive conversations with them.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. I get
And
you.
honest ones.
An honest conversation. And this is before we move into the conversation or asking them. I mean, being open and honest, and especially the family members who are now understanding and learning that prisons affect you psychologically. How do you have those conversations with your loved ones? At some point, you have to talk about it. My thing
Of
is
course.
this: not wait until they get out that back gate. So knowing now that prison has this type of effect on you, okay, we need to start doing some things now to
Mhm.
combat that.
Mhm.
before you get out and you be hit with all of this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Mhm.
like we've been happy and we've had these conversations, but you never told me anything about this.
Right.
You didn't talk to me about this. And that's
Right.
my thing, having these conversations now so that we can start getting the tools on the inside that they need, whether it's a PDF that we didn't print it out about mental health or whatever, giving them some tools where they can start working on themselves now versus waiting till you get out that back gate, because you got a whole nother world that you have
Mhm.
to deal with. So
Mhm.
that's my thing. How do we have that? And before you answer that, let me ask you this. So you talked about the mentors that you had on the inside. What type of support did you have on the outside, family member wise?
Mhm. So before I answer those two questions, let me say that education is a real big piece of it as well. I was really blessed to stumble across a book. So one day I go outside, early part of summer, and I instantly feel like crying. And I'm like, what is wrong? Like, I feel like I just want to break down and just bawl out and cry. So I came across this book in a library that talked about seasonal depression.
Seasonal. Okay.
Seasonal depression.
Okay.
I equate summer months with all of everything related to the summer fun: barbecues, beaches, fishing, outdoor activities. And now that I'm in prison and it's warm, I'm missing all of that. And because the season is upon me and I don't have access to beaches, barbecues, friends, swimming, fishing, I'm down in the dumps. But if I hadn't got blessed enough to stumble across this book and I was able to provide a diagnosis for myself, I probably would have walked around very miserable for the rest of the summer because I couldn't understand what was going on. So, also a big piece of it is education. It's
Okay.
education for the person away, it's education for the family, and then it's a coming together and sharing of education that supports each other. The person away supporting the family that's on the outside as they're being educated and learning more, and vice versa. So it was great for me because I had aunts, a mom, and a sister and grandparents that supported me. My sister and my aunts, they loaded me with books, which was very helpful in my growth.
Okay.
I probably read two, three books a day every day for years,
Wow.
so that was very helpful because then there was no real educational system in prisons in Michigan back then. Great today and all of the bells and whistles and services and programming, but nothing really existed back then. So having the ability to absorb information on my own through my reading was the best resource and best support for me to grow as a person, as a man. So education also plays heavily into
Yeah.
it. And having that love, even though you don't talk to someone every day, you don't see them all the time, but knowing they're still out there thinking about you, praying for you. So that family connectedness also helps.
Okay. So let me ask you, did you ever spend any time in solitary confinement?
Yes. And I would pray terribly for anybody that has to experience that. I go into the jail at least about 3 times a week. Again, today I was there for doing voter registration. And I tell the guys and the women, I don't know if I don't know how you do it. I could never put myself in this situation. And last summer, there were some young guys. I was like, man, would y'all just like get it together? Like this situation is not great, but it could be a lot worse. And a few weeks later, two of the guys were in segregation in the jail. And I was very strong with them. And I said, this hurt, doesn't it? He's like, big bro, please ask them to let me out of here.
Wow.
This is terrible. I said, dude, it can get much worse than this.
Yeah.
I've encouraged you to keep your head straight and narrow because you can be months in segregation. You can be years into segregation. It
Yeah.
is by far a very crippling, mentally, emotionally experience. So yes, the few months I spent on two different occasions in solitary confinement was enough for me. It is
Yeah,
very, very inhumane. It is very, 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 very damaging emotionally, very damaging mentally. And, one of the things you have to look at, and one of the things the family can support a person in jail is, how are you in prison in prison?
yeah,
I'm in segregation in prison. That
yeah,
doesn't make sense.
yeah,
So
yeah,
encouraging them and helping the loved one in prison understand your behavior has to be positive for yourself. Your
mm,
behavior is an extension to us and for us while we're still in the community. So your behavior has to be responsible for you and us. If
yeah.
you're going to be in prison, in prison.
Right, right, right. I remember Kevin said he was in uh, segregation, and his parents and them came to visit him,
Hmm.
and they had to roll him out in a cage
Hmm.
and roll him up to the window to talk to his parents.
Hmm.
And he said his dad looked at him and said, "You have to be the biggest D fool there is." And
Hmm.
he said, he was like, I just sit down here. Why are you attacking me? And he was like, "You are in prison, in prison,
Correct.
in prison, in prison."
Correct.
Wow. I have a family member who is currently incarcerated, and a year or so ago, he got sent to solitary confinement for 4 months.
Hmm.
He did that 4 months, and then he came out a year or so later. He got sent back for a year,
Hmm.
and we did a. Once he got out, we had a video visit with him, and
Hmm.
all of the family members were saying, "Oh, he looked so good. He looked good, whatever." And I just looked at it, and I could see all over his face that
Hmm.
mentally, emotionally,
Hmm.
he had been through some things
Hmm.
while locked in that box 23 to 24 hours a day. And then when he and I got a chance to talk alone, he just poured his heart out to me and told me how hard that was for him to be in that box for 24 days. And I just let him talk. I didn't whatever, because he hadn't really had any meaningful conversation in a year.
Hmm.
So I just let him talk, and he was telling me about all of the things that he experienced. And this is why I say to family members, we don't know everything that our loved ones have been through. So there will be some behaviors that we may see that we may not understand. And this is another thing with the family members. I want you guys to understand this, right? Again, and you've heard me say this, the person that you go to visit and the person that you're talking to on the phone, when they get home, may not be necessarily that person with that same mentality, right? They don't know what they don't know till they
Hmm.
get out, and then you start doing like I did. You changing on me. You changing on me. So this is why I want you guys to understand they go through so much. Now, this, Percy, I have to say this. They go through so much, and we support them. When y'all go to solitary confinement, we go to solitary confinement, right?
Of course.
But nobody gets a pass for bad behavior. Just because
Of
you get
course.
a prison, you go to prison. Because I see some of these guys come out, and Percy, they come in the house and they bring that same prison mentality into the house.
Hmm.
So we have to let them know this is not acceptable. This is when we set boundaries and we impose consequences for the actions, because some of them come out and they look at us like aliens because they've been doing this thing over here for so long. This is normal and this is abnormal,
Hmm.
right? Some have
Hmm.
came home, and just because you had to take a shower at 7 o'clock in there, you want everybody in the household to take a shower at 7 o'clock. Just
Right.
because life lights were off at 9 o'clock in here at the household, you want the lights off at 9 o'clock over here,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are some of the things that family members are dealing with. These are some stories that ain't nobody talking about,
Right. That's
right?
funny. One of
Yeah.
my friends came home about a year and a half ago, and he was staying initially with one of his daughters, and his daughter had to tell him like that, stop taking a shower and washing your underwear in the shower and hanging them up. We have washing machines and dryers for that.
Yeah.
Like, this is not prison anymore. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny, but it's not funny. But it's just one of those interesting
Institutionalized.
things that people do in prison that sometimes they don't know how to turn it off immediately once they're back in the community.
Right. Institutionalized
Yep.
is what it is. So you will may see some things like that, but again, it's the things that we take for granted.
Right.
We take for granted. When you come out of cut this light off. Well, how long have you had to cut a light off?
Right.
Right. So it's things. It's really about both sides getting to understand one another.
Of
That's
course.
that's pretty much what it is. It's both sides getting to understand one another. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. So this is and we're gonna wrap up. Now let me ask you this. So
Yes, ma'am.
anybody that has any questions for Mr. Glover, please put your questions in the chat and I'm gonna post them. But today you've been doing all week, you've been busy, you've been doing some phenomenal things on the inside. Can
Mm.
you just share with us what you've been doing on the inside of the jail?
So one of the things that is a struggle for people in jail is access to information. You don't really have radio, TV, you don't have social media, you don't have all these tools to become informed in the same way that you can become informed in prison. So again, in Michigan, if you have not been sentenced, you can vote absentee ballot. So 2 weeks ago, to support our jail population and our jail population of eligible voters, we had a voter mechanics forum just to give the practical and basic and most accurate information on what it means to be an engaged, educated, and informed voter. So it was myself, Keela Crane, who was Deputy Legal Counsel at the Michigan Department of State, Patrick McNeil, who is Executive Director of North Flint Neighborhood Action Council, Mackenzie Walsh of Promote the Vote, and our Genesee County Clerk Register of Deeds, Dominique Clemens. And the issue is we don't have enough civic engagement for people to understand all aspects of the electoral process. What that means is we most don't understand the roles and responsibility of a lot of the seats.
Yeah.
We don't understand the responsibilities of our elected officials. We don't trust or believe in the electoral process because we don't understand most times. Again, for Black and Brown communities, we are so impoverished that voting is not at the forefront of our minds. So having this civic education in the jail is very important, but civic engagement broadly across all aspects of people are important. That needs to happen more consistently within our jails, prisons, but also importantly, in our communities. Not enough people are engaged in the electoral process, but most people don't understand so many aspects of it. Most people don't understand what a Democratic Party really is, a Republican Party, a working class party, a Libertarian Party, an Independent Party. They don't understand it. Most people don't understand the roles and responsibility outside of a prosecutorial assignment for a county prosecutor. They don't understand all of the different hats and roles a county sheriff plays, or a county board of commissioner, or city council. Most people don't understand the hierarchy and functionality as well of all these different roles and responsibilities. So all that said, that we must do a much better job in civic education across the board among all people, young, old, and as well as the middle. So that was one event. I've also been again in Michigan. Michigan is an early voting state. We have a presidential primary next Tuesday, February 27th. So I've been heavily doing a lot of voter registration, education in the jail as well as in the community. I spoke at the Genesee County Democratic Black Caucus last night. We have something that's called Flint Genesee Job Corps, which is kind of like a work skills development campus where participants 17 to 24 reside to get all of those soft, hard training, vocational skills they need to be successful. So I spoke to a group of 18 to 24-year-olds, about 250 last week, to help them understand their responsibility as young people in voting. I've been really busy actually all of this year. Last week I was in Ben Harbor at the Michigan Black Summit 2-day conference, Friday and Saturday. Last month I was at the National Baptist Convention in Memphis speaking about voter suppression. It's been a very busy
So let me
2024 already.
so let me ask you this, two questions. The first question is, so when you go into the prisons and you said you registered maybe 40 this week
Today. Yes,
to
today.
40 today to vote on
At
the
the jail.
inside.
Yep, in the jail.
In the jail, 40 today in the jail. To so you guys educate them on all of this you just told us, and
Yep.
when they vote, do they feel empowered in some way that their voice matter?
So this is this next Tuesday election will make the 13th straight election that we've supported jail voting at the Genesee County Jail. And we had some pretty beautiful testimonies. We had a young lady who was subsequently going to prison, but who hadn't been sentenced yet. And she said, you know what? I now understand the importance of voting for myself, but also for my friends and family that is still in the community. I understand the difference it makes for my friends and family in the community. And I need to play my responsibility as a loved one for my friends, family, as well as my community.
Wow.
So you not only hear those heartfelt testimonies, but you hear also and you can hear as they communicate, but also see when that light bulb flicks on. Now they get it.
Yeah, yeah,
Most people in jail are first-time voters. Most people in
yeah,
jail have never thought about voting.
yeah.
So that sense of understanding, again, when that light bulb comes on and when they express that to you, it's a pretty joyous time.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. In jail, these are individuals that have not been sentenced, or
Correct.
some of them may just have jail time and they're not going to prison. They just have jail time, or is it they're sitting in jail? Some of them are sitting in jail before the sentencing.
Correct. So you can't be sentenced. You can't be sentenced and go into prison, and you can't be sentenced to jail time. You can be
Okay.
convicted, but not sentenced for either going to prison or serving a sentence in jail. So you can also be there for pretrial services, but you just can't be sentenced. While if this
Okay.
is only in Michigan, this is not across
In
the
Michigan.
country, only in Michigan.
Okay.
Not to
So
say that you can't vote from jail in other places, but I don't want to get into that conversation because some places you can't vote as a convicted felon in the community. Some
yeah,
places you can't
yeah,
vote from jail. Some places you can vote from jail. So it'd just be a very, very long-winded and
yeah.
long conversation for that education.
Understood. So those who are in jail, is there a max time? Because I know some people here in Texas, they'll be in jail, 3, 4, 5 years before they are even sent to prison. So is there a max allotted time that they sit in jail? And if so, are there any programs? Are they doing anything? Do you guys have anything pertaining to, mental health education while they are just sitting there waiting to be sentenced or whatever?
So for prosecutors across the country and judges across the country, COVID created a backdraft because our courts were closed for such a long period of months. They were closed. So no court proceedings were taking place and people were still entering the judicial process. So it created a huge backlog. So just to give you an example how ridiculous and how high of a backlog, in Genesee County, there are 26,000 plus outstanding warrants on just the district court side. Even though
Wow.
there's District court is misdemeanors most times, but 26 plus thousand. That's
Wow.
a huge number.
Wow. Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, people are staying in our jail much longer than they ever had before, going through the court process. And yes, we have a ton of different services to keep people as healthy as we can ensure that they can maintain while they're in jail. So one of the things that is a national program, Ignite Inmate Growth Naturally and Intentionally, is now in about 25% of the states across the country, was a concept that Sheriff Swanson came up with, and his idea was to turn the Genesee County Jail into a full model educational center. Now, for a person with lived experience, that's where Percy came in. I say, Sheriff Swanson said, let's have a dinner. He brought the plates and silverware. Percy came in and was able to bring the food. Because as a person who has lived experience with jail, prison, parole, I best understood what services and what things needed to be put in place to support our people that's now currently in the Genesee County Jail, or that was in the county jail when we created Ignite 4.5 years ago. And one of the things, well, a few of the things I tell people in Michigan, and Michigan numbers are pretty consistent across the state. So in Michigan, excuse me, in Michigan, about 1 to 2% people will die in prison. Most people are getting out of prison at some point. The majority of people, which is about 60 to 70% in Michigan, are not going to prison. They're going back to the community. There's a smaller percentage of people that go to prison. There's even a smaller percentage of people who go to prison for a very long time. There is a very small percentage of people who die in prisons in Michigan. All that to say is that people are coming back to our community who have experienced jail and prison. So we want to give them the best tools and best services so they can be responsible community members. We don't want to come and see people who are coming back to the community that was struggling financially, did some irresponsible things because they were struggling financially. Now come back to the community after jail and prison, and now they're back in a place where they feel like they got to rob and steal because they don't have access to an income. Easy fix: give them a job, give them entrepreneurship, assist them in finding ways to be successful from an economic standpoint. It makes sense when we have people that's going to come back to the community at some point. Also, there's only a small category of people who are in jail and prison today. You have the youth offenders who did things out of immaturity, being juvenile, coming from a broken home, lack of whatever, whatever, whatever. You have, in the most irresponsible way, mental health populations who are criminalized because they are mentally ill. You have also our addicted and our substance abuse folks who are struggling with just that, alcohol and addiction, which in my mind, because I have a drinking problem or I have a drug problem, don't 100% make me a criminal. But if we get in front of those things earlier, people don't go to jail and prison, but we have to find the resources to help these people once they're back in the community, because if not, they fall back into the cracks. And you want your neighbor to be in the best place that you are. You want your neighbor to have the same high level of curb appeal as a homeowner. You want to make sure that when you're away from your home, your neighbor can safely and responsibly be somewhat of a monitor for your home. We want to work together to keep the community safe. And when people are struggling mentally, emotionally, behaviorally, most times because of finances, let's just help people the right way in the most economic place.
So that
Because,
those, go ahead.
go ahead, please.
No, so those are some of the programs that you guys the training that you have in your jails.
So we have a barber school. We have Elwood Credit Union that teaches a financial fitness literacy class. We have Dr. Shane Jackson from Michigan State University who teaches a healthy eating class. We have Mock Community College, who teaches virtual welding. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on with all of
Okay.
the classes we
That you
teach.
have. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, wonderful classes. Wonderful classes. Love that. But Percy, you ain't told me nothing about they have any type of mental health education that talks about trauma and all of this stuff. Do you
Of
have?
course. So you
Okay.
have to understand that education is mental health. All education is mental health. Now we have also that's more specific to the internal stuff. We have Crim Foundation, who has a mindfulness class. I'm sorry, I almost lost the name of the class. The mindfulness class that
Okay.
teaches you healthy breathing techniques, that teaches you how to emotionally de-escalate. It
Okay.
teaches you journaling when you start to be frustrated.
Okay.
It teaches you how to not only breathe, journal, but look at yourself internally. So we have again a long list of classes that is
Okay. Okay.
cognitive, educational, emotional, mental, and
Okay.
addresses behavioral aspects for each and every individual in jail.
All right. Check the box. Check the box. I just had to make sure we can get that box checked off. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, Percy, someone put in the comments that you are an amazing example of turning your life around, and I have to agree with her. Now,
Thank you. Thank you.
lastly, just talk to the wife.
Talk to the wife.
Hold on, I'm gonna tell you what you need to talk to her about.
Okay.
So talk to the wife whose husband has been locked down. He's out. He's refusing any type of mental health treatment, and he has this stuff that is visible. He
Mhm.
has uh, the behaviors that is visible, and
Mhm.
it's causing this wife mental distress. What is something that she can do,
Mhm.
uh, you know, and supporting him without losing herself totally?
Of course. So I wouldn't make it just about a person or a guy exiting prison. A lot of the same, from what I see, a lot of the same struggles that couples have, even for when the man has been away or the woman has been away, are the same struggles that couples have for when nobody's experienced jail or prison. You know, the communication aspect, the, the communication as it relates to the man being very transparent, very honest, very comfortable in sharing all of what they're feeling and thinking internally. The same for the woman, being very confident and comfortable, being able to express and communicate everything from a deep down internal place. So it's those communication struggles, obviously. It's those lack of comfortability around communication that we don't always feel safe or find the comfort to be able to communicate. A lot of times it's also those societal stereotypes that I have to fall into, that as a man sometimes I'm not supposed to communicate like this. I'm not supposed to cry to my wife because society tells me that that's not responsible as a man or as a husband. So I think all of the same things apply whether one person in a couple has been in prison or not. That, those struggles are pretty significant and similar regardless of if incarceration played a part in the relationship.
Okay, okay. So we're gonna agree to disagree on some things, right? Because it's gotten to the point that, and this has happened, you know, years ago, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When I am talking to a wife or somebody sets up a call, before they even tell me
Mm-hmm.
what they're going through, I already know.
Mm-hmm.
Same behavior, different zip code. Same behavior. It's just like, yeah, whether you've been to prison or not, you have those issues. You have the communicated, I mean, you're not effective, either you're not effectively communicating or you're not an active listener. But it's some variations when a person has been to prison, it's a little different.
Oh, it's definitely heightened.
You're right, it's slightly different
It's
than
heightened for sure.
right. And the common denominator when I have these calls is, okay, what's the problem? Either he, she, I'm not just going to say it's pertaining to the men. Even I've talked to some husbands whose wives have been to prison. Okay, same behaviors. There's some psychological distress as a result of being incarcerated. There's some cognitive impairment, decision making, not making decision, not really. You have the ability to make decisions, but that decision making process have been suppressed for so long, you just feel like it's the norm. Okay, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do, I don't care. But not knowing for the wife or the husband, it's like, okay, can you just make a decision, right? But
No,
because
not always.
right, that's what I'm saying.
Not always. But you got to think about it, that and age plays a huge part in this. If I was a young man or woman that entered prison and I had no experience in making any adult choices at that point in my life, and then I'm released 10, 15 years later, and now I have to immediately communicate adult choices to now my spouse, partner, or mate when I've never done so before. So it sounds silly, but no, I can't communicate, and no, I can't make the decision. I have to learn how to do so. I've never done it before.
Whew, yeah.
It sounds the same, but experience is by far the greatest teacher we'll ever have. From any classroom, any lecturer or professor, from anything we can Google or see on YouTube, experience is the greatest teacher. And if I haven't had the experience to communicate, to make decisions that are responsible to my spouse and mate, I don't know how.
Yeah.
And yes, for the spouse, it can be insanely frustrating waiting for that growth to happen when, in the most adult way, the spouse expects for it to happen today.
Yeah.
But then also, as I'm growing and learning, it's just that. It's a learning process. There's a learning curve. So I might not make the right choices or decisions at some time.
You know what? But this is one of the things that makes it so difficult for a family member.
It makes it very difficult.
That this one here is when you've been to prison, you spend a whole lot of time, and you come out. You don't want to do no counseling. You don't want to do anything because you say, prison ain't affected me. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
That right there, it makes it so hard for family members to get through to a person that says, I've been in a cage, a dorm full of men for decades and it didn't bother me. I'm good. Deal with it. Deal with it. And it makes it so hard for the family unit to heal when a person has that type of mentality. Did you have any counseling? Did you have to have any counseling?
So keep in mind, again, when I was released from prison, nothing existed.
Nothing existed.
Nothing existed back then. There were no services on any level of support, none, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
But it also wasn't a cool thing, but it turned out to be a cool thing because I found the discipline to make positive steps when there were no outlets to support anything positive.
Yeah.
So because one or two things didn't exist, and then I look around, actually 1 to 100 didn't exist. Okay, I have to find my way. And then finding my way, again, it forced me to be a whole lot more disciplined because there was nothing that checked off. I couldn't touch anything unless I got very creative in finding a way to touch it and creating it for myself. So again, unfortunately, nothing existed back then.
Well, Mr. Percy, I tell you, you did take them lemons and turn it into some very sweet lemonade.
That's our
You
job in life, Miss Sheila.
you
You do it every day.
you
I
did.
see and follow, and I applaud you in all of what you do.
Why, thank you. It's all about just I just want the families to heal.
Of
You
course,
know, I was that hurt woman. And I believe hurt people, and people heal people.
of course.
So I just want this conversation to stay visible.
Hmm.
Uh, and we cannot take mental health off of the table when we're talking about reentry. And one of the things, Percy, now that I am talking about, and I'll be speaking at a conference in April at the National Association for Reentry Professionals, NARP. And I love them because they allow me to come in and speak as raw as I need to be.
Hmm.
Reentry is raw, and so I can really talk. And my thing is this is when they are forming these reentry programs and talking about reentry, family members need to be at the table.
Of
They
course.
need to be at the table, and a lot of the programs don't have family
Hmm.
members at the table. So my
Hmm.
thing is getting family members at the table, talking about their experiences, because there's definitely something missing when we have same behaviors, different zip codes.
And also, one thing we have to be very mindful of is that a lot of people go into jail and prison already with mental health issues
Yeah, yeah,
that become heightened when I'm in jail and prison.
absolutely.
So one of the struggles are we are looking at the mental health that develops in jail and prison, but we're not looking at the layered mental health that brought me to jail and prison, that I need to peel all of this back and look and dig deeper into the layers of
Yeah,
all of what's developed. It's like a callus. If you
yeah,
wear a shoe that's rubbing against your small toe and it continues to rub, the callus gets thicker and thicker. The
that's it.
mental health issues get thicker and thicker and get buried, that we miss them because there's a transition in mental health that led us to jail,
Yeah,
that heightened in jail, that when we transition to prison, most times heightened in prison. Then a lot of times we come into the community and it's a culture shock,
yeah,
especially for people that's been away for a long time. That adds even more and creates more, I'll say, mental health paranoia, not maybe mental health challenges or issues, but creates more mental health paranoia. So I think the big thing is, again, it's like a callus, removing the callus completely, but also in removing the callus, removing it in layers to understand all of the backstory internally for a person and
yeah.
what they're struggling with.
Yeah, yeah. So true, so true. Because another thing is the trauma. We can't take it off the table. Not saying that everybody who has had some type of traumatic experience in their life is going to end up in prison. That's not what I'm saying. But a person that has had that pre-incarceration trauma, then they goes to prison, and that's traumatic in itself. And you come out. So it's like Kevin and I used to talk about. It's like peeling back an onion. You think you got it, and then there's something else that pops up. So
Mm-hmm.
this is an ongoing conversation that'll never stop. When I first started this, I was like, Lord, if I could just get it to one person, I will be
Mm-hmm.
satisfied. But he has opened the door where this message has reached over 100,000 people, and I couldn't do it by myself. It's people like you that are open to come and educate us and talk with us and share some information about that life. And
Right.
most importantly, is to show us and to give us hope that there is success after lockdown. And again, you are one of those success stories. Again, Mr. Percy Glover, I appreciate your
Thank you, Ms.
time.
Bruno.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. And to the audience, thank you guys for chiming in. I'll go back through the comments and answer any questions that you may have. Normally, I would put the questions on the screen, but I'm like a sponge today. I was just trying to get it all in myself, right? But again, Percy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mad love for you. One day I'm gonna get to Michigan and we're gonna talk to
In the
people.
summer. I know you don't like the winter months. In the summer.
Yeah, in the summer, I'm gonna come to Michigan and we're gonna talk to people and see how we can collab together and make this a conversation, that everybody can chime in on. So without further ado, I'm gonna say good night. And again, thank you so much, Mr. Glover.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All
Enjoy
right.
you so much.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.